Welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis.
Hi, and welcome to What's the Point? I'm Bill Ellis, and this is where we talk with people who found what drives them and how their passion fuels their purpose. Today we're joined by an artist whose work speaks straight to the heart. Cbabi Bayoc is a painter, a muralist, an illustrator, and an author. His work appears in galleries, on album covers, in children's books, and on public walls that celebrate family and community. Through his art and writing, he's painting the world he wants his children and ours to thrive in. He recently moved his studio from downtown St. Louis to East St. Louis. We'll talk about that in a bit. But it's a place rich in creativity, resilience, and history. We'll talk about his art, his words, his community, and what keeps him moving forward. Cbabi, welcome to What's the Point?
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So when people first experience your work, what is it that you hope they feel or get from that across your broad spectrum of work?
I hope they're inspired by the color, depending on what the message is, the subject. If it just speaks to some part of, what connects them to the rest of the community. I hope they see that I care about community. I'm very inspired by, I just like painting people. I like painting emotion. I like painting fun. I like painting seriousness. So I get a lot of different responses to my work.
And that's partly the magic of it, Cbabi, because we all see things differently. We all take things in differently. And for you to paint what's in your heart and then for people to take it how we best take it is a really cool thing and a neat aspect of a true talent. So Cbabi Bayoc is a very interesting name, and I'm going to let you explain that because they're acronyms, but very meaningful acronyms.
I was in Grambling State University. Before I got there, I was signing my artwork as Cbabi. I was born Clifford Bernard Miscale, and I wanted to have a different name that I put on my paintings. But when I got to Grambling, I studied Kiswahili, and I liked the way that they put the consonants together. So I already had Cbabi as a word name I was using. So I thought about how I could make it sound, African, and then also, what would it mean? Because the spelling was, interesting. So I decided to change the Y to an I and came up with creative Black artists battling ignorance. And then also I wanted to wait till I got married so that, I have no idea why, but I didn't want my kids to just have a name from dad. I wanted to break that whole idea. So I wanted to have a name that came from, both parents, and came up with Blessed African Youth of Creativity.
So that's amazing, So you put it all together: creative Black artists battling ignorance and blessed African youth of creativity. That by itself tells the story of you and your art and your messaging. I think they're beautiful names, and thank you for sharing the meaning, because it just makes them that much more beautiful. Understanding the why, understanding, if you will, the what's the point of the name. Let's talk a little bit about Grambling University down in my country, Louisiana. How was that?
It was fantastic because I'm from O'Fallon, Illinois. And, now I'm in East St. Louis, but there was a time when I was a military kid. I don't know if you call it a town or suburbs, but, the few times that I went to East St. Louis, I bought into the same stuff that the news fed everybody that, if you're around too many Black folks, there's going to be trouble. And so I was blessed with the opportunity to go to Grambling and to get immersed, and I immediately felt at home. So, that it's amazing how fast something you don't even know you've been spoon-fed your whole life can just dissipate in an instant. So being down there was everything.
And it's a cool school and a cool area, and an outstanding marching band as well. I think they bring a whole new definition to marching band. A friend of mine went to the Ohio State University in the marching band, and you get a whole different vibe from that versus Grambling and some of their peers. It's really cool. I'm going to come back to East St. Louis in just a minute, literally and figuratively. But after Grambling, you knew you were an artist at heart, and you started working, I think, at Six Flags here in St. Louis, an amusement park, doing caricatures.
I did. I started off at Union Station downtown
Okay.
first, working in an art gallery, picture this gallery. And it was actually a caricature booth downstairs. And one of the artists named John, we became cool because I would go down there and watch them draw. And then he came upstairs and saw me doing portraits. And one day he told me to consider that the fact that the park was about to open up soon and he think I'd be good at it, and little did I didn't know at that moment that the gallery I was working at was going to be closing soon. So it was perfect timing. I really had no other option. I had no experience doing caricatures, but the fact that somebody told me he thought I could do it and I thought what they were doing was cool, I signed up and
Yeah.
I did one season and one season only.
I'm just curious. I don't know how many of the listeners are familiar with Six Flags in particular, but most of them are familiar with adventure parks, theme parks, whatever they're called. How was it working there? Kind of an interesting crowd the few times I've been.
You know what? Six Flags is a very interesting crowd. I'll leave it at that. The crowd is very interesting. And also, you work in all weather, whether it's raining, it's super hot. Even, in October, Scarefest or something, I forgot what they have, but even in the cold, like you're out there. And also, what we do is by commission. So, from artists like me who were just learning, like people didn't pay unless they liked what you did.
Mm.
And also, there's some artists who've been doing it a while and they're the rock stars. And so you can imagine,
Yeah.
you're sitting there and you have nobody standing behind you and the person next to you has a line. So every now and then, or most times, especially in the beginning, I just got up like all the customers and I watched, the artists draw people too and just joined in and then just practiced at home when I, got home in the evenings.
What a great lesson. I mean, to look at that as an opportunity to learn as opposed to sitting there being a victim of poor me. I mean, folks, if you're listening and you have someplace to go, I hope not, but that's a good enough lesson just right there. So thank you for that. Let's get back to East St. Louis. So you've moved your studio recently to East St. Louis to the Sunshine Cultural Arts Center. Tell me about that and tell us more about the Cultural Arts Center itself, please.
Yeah, we just recently did a mural there for Sunshine, and he had already had a relationship with Amber. She'd been donating her time, helping, the center raise funds through the performances that their drum and dance company do. And the Sunshine story is great. I hope people take the opportunity to go online and learn more about it because I believe since 78, he's been committed to bringing culture, to the people of not just, well, mostly East St. Louis, but then the metro, because, some people live here. But for the most part, he's following the footsteps of Catherine Dunham, his teacher. She asked her students, who was going to make sure that the culture was still being shared with the community. And he jumped in with, all feet and both hands. And literally to this day, he's still playing and teaching. And I mean, it's just an amazing, environment to be in.
What a cool story. And I'm going to take a little personal dive here. You talked about perceptions and if you're around Black people, something's sure bad to happen and all of this stuff that you're taught. Well, I've been in St. Louis now for a pretty long time, I guess about 40 years more or less. And East St. Louis has been depicted badly here in St. Louis. East St. Louis is right across the Mississippi River from St. Louis. It's in the state of Illinois for those of you listening. And I bring this up because I think it's a very important learning point. East St. Louis has gotten a bad rap in movies and all across the board. For the past 8 or 9 years, I've got some very good friends in East St. Louis, and I've got a fellowship that I'm a part of, and I'm in East St. Louis at least twice a week, every week. And, talk about opening my eyes and others' eyes. And people here, you go to St. Louis, and I said, yeah, you've got to come. And those people that do are amazed. So it's a matter, I believe, that's why I'm going to tie this back to the Cultural Center, because I think it's important for us to open our eyes and look for similarities and look for the good and try to step back from a lot of the things that we've been infused with, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, I wouldn't go there, it's dangerous. Well, you know what? Every place is dangerous if you're not careful. So that's my little plug for East St. Louis, but also my hope of adding a little bit of insight to people to let down your guard, open up, and you're going to learn some things and see some things differently. And that's a lot. I'll turn that right back to you. That's a lot of what your art does. And your art is not just visual painting and such. Music is real important in your art. Talk to us about the music thread. I mean, you've been on CD covers, album covers for years. Let us hear about that.
Yeah, I was blessed with the opportunity to sell some work to Prince back in late 90s, and then a few more early 2000. I think all of them actually were in the late 90s, and then one of them wound up being used as a Rainbow Children album cover, and also had, a Violator album cover that I got from my caricature job experience, which is great, and my Grambling experience. Both of those things combined together allowed that door to open. And then I had another one. I had a few more, after that. But music, I mean, I love music. I love all kinds of music. I love everything from hip hop to bluegrass to symphony to, I mean, strings is definitely, I have a guitar head on my hand. Strings is probably my favorite sound.
Okay.
So, and also the way I create my compositions, I like there to be movement and rhythm. And I think about songs, especially hip hop, when, you get back to, a stanza like you would in poetry. Like I try to have those hot spots around in my paintings. So music definitely is very integral part of my practice, whether it's obvious in the image itself or if you just look at the way the lines move. Once you know my story, you can start to see that, okay, yeah, I kind of get it.
Yeah. And whether we know that or not, music is important to you, it seems like. Do you listen to any particular genre of music when you're creating, or does it depend on what you're creating? What really moves you when you're trying to get that right movement in your art?
It really depends, because like if I'm on the wall and I'm tired, I need something a little more upbeat, then it's definitely hip hop. If I'm in a school, it'll be jazz because it's instrumental. Sometimes the environment will dictate with what I'm listening to. And also, if I've been listening to podcasts for a while and find myself in a certain headspace, I'll turn to jazz or something to lighten up my head so that
Yeah.
I'm just focusing on what I'm working on, and just being light,
Cool. So music obviously is a thread throughout all of your art, and as I started to say at the intro, your art and the application of your creativity is across the board. And I mentioned children's books. You've done art for covers of children's books, but I think you've also done some writing yourself. How'd you get into the writing or the illustrating of children's books, and what does that mean to you?
I've started writing. I don't have anything. Well, no, you know what? I have a dad book out there that I did. Thank you for that, because I wasn't going to claim that.
I would. I'm going to put it out there in a second.
That was a middle of a nighter that I did, but a lot. Actually, honestly, the pressure came from outside. I love painting. Once I had children, I got really into children's books, and that influenced the way my art, started to look. I started getting a little more cartoony and illustrator like. And then it was other people telling me that my work looked great for, animation and children's books. So I got a lot of requests before I said yes. And so, yeah, the few books that I do have out there were the few yeses that I gave, but there were a lot of no's before that because I just wasn't interested. Because I didn't study that, and two, it's a whole different way of using your brain and your creativity.
Yeah. Another great lesson, though, for myself and everyone listening, we don't have to say yes to every opportunity because not every opportunity is right for us. So to be selective, which is what I hear you saying, you were selective, makes all the sense in the world, because when you did say yes a couple of times, the result was incredible. So one of them is When I Became Dad, right?
Correct.
I assume I know what inspired that, but you tell me.
So I did that while I had a series I was working on, 365 Days with Dad, and I was painting an image of a Black father and his children every day for a year. I did this in 2012, and it wound up taking 2 years, but I was posting something every single day on social media with my artwork. And then I had all these images, and I wanted to come up with, I didn't have a book of the whole series, so I decided to come up with a small children's book that I could put online and people could order. And I used some of the images from the series and then just wrote a quick something to go with each image. And that's how I came up with that book, So it was, I mean, I was all in, I've been in since my kids were born, but definitely while being in the midst of that project and just everything I was taking in, I just wanted to share a little piece of that, because the paintings themselves, it really became a commission-based project. So the paintings themselves belong to people. So, but a lot of people followed it. And this was my way of being able to give a larger community a piece of the project.
I just love how everything is tied together for you. One thing's led to the other, and it just kind of made sense. And the When I Became Dad book it's a very interesting and appealing book. Do words tell different stories and have different meanings from the same story for you? I mean, you talked about it depends on how people see your work, on how they might take it, and you just want them to take what they get from it. Is that the same thing when with what I'll call the little writing, your words that you've done?
I would think so. I mean, I think just putting all that together and just thinking about, in general, like I love documentaries, and I love how you can watch something from many perspectives. And so just like with art, I can have any intention I want, but the most of the intention is fueling me to put the work out there.
Mm-hmm.
But once it's out there, I can't control,
right,
unless we have an exchange like this on why I painted it, which might influence what you're seeing. But I love hearing people tell me what they're seeing, and they never met me or anything else.
right.
And it gives me more appreciation for my work and more intention for the next piece. Because like people are paying attention, people are noticing. I mean, the first time I heard people went to one of my shows and they were crying, like I had never experienced anything like that before. And it was the image of motherhood, and then I had the same experiences when I did the series on fatherhood. Between that, with all the music, everybody thought the work was cool. So learning, just taking these cues of like you get the temperature of what people need, and it always usually comes back to family, love, being seen, cared for. So usually, most of what I do is around that, because I've been told that by people's reactions.
Yeah. And again, what you probably think is just kind of, it's just me being Cbabi, is terrific lessons for all of us, because, being open to understanding the value that we have, the talent that we have, but then knowing how to deliver it and in what way to those people that need or are looking for that value, and to get that to match up is a gift. And it's what I hear from you is you're not forcing things out there as much as you're following your heart. You're following that creative magic, I'll call it, because I'm not very creative, but that creative magic on how you want to express yourself. But then you're very open to hearing how it relates to people and the messages that they're most open to hearing. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love hearing what people got to say about my work. Because sometimes I hear a lot of artists say that they're a vessel. Like, so things come through you. Like, I don't always have an explanation for everything I create. Most times I just know I just feel something, connection with the image that inspired me to create X, Y, and Z. Outside of that, then I just react and I do it, and then it's nice to hear like, okay, this means, this means this to me, or this means that to me. Like, I like to hear that.
Well, yeah, I think we all are appreciative when people value what we do. So that makes a lot of sense. Just a quick follow-up on 365 Days with Dad. You said, was all of that art commissioned work and resold, or where has that been on display, or is it on display?
It was once displayed at Children's Hospital here in St. Louis.
Okay.
Because I had many of them who were done here, and families were here in St. Louis. And also I saved dates throughout the year so I could paint my own images without looking at somebody's portrait or photos, because that's another layer of stress. I just wanted to find subjects and just paint my own characters. But yeah, most of them, they're all in somebody's home at this moment. I have one. Yeah, I have one, but all the other ones belong to they're scattered all over the world.
Well, I've seen images, but I hope one day to see the one that you have. And who knows, maybe I'll see one in someone's home one of these days as well. So, again, you work in so many art forms. What connects it all for you? What's the thread that ties it all together?
I think community, and humanity. I just, since Six Flags, definitely faces and portraits have been an integral part of my career. And then beyond that, the more I look at work and love work and, appreciate styles, graffiti, even doing graphic work and abstract work and lines and hard edges, like I've played with all those things, but I think connecting thing is bold color, emotion, love of line and design. I think you can find those in almost all of them. But I think the common thread is community. Yeah, we all belong to something.
Yeah. Yeah, and that leads me to my next question, which is maybe a little bit bigger question as far as what I'm trying to get you to get to is, so you said painting the world is how you want your children to see the world and how you want everyone's children to see the world. And since we're all children, I guess that covers all of us, right? When you picture the world, what do you see?
What do I see right now? You know what I see is I see some people I keep hearing the word silos. I mean, because right now me and you are in community and we're having a conversation. This will affect how I walk out the door and I interact with folks moving forward. It just does, because that's just how life works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we just need to realize that, we're all connected in some way, whether we talk to each other, over each other in the car or whatever, but like we all feed off of one another all the time. And so I think we're just in a space where some people aren't leaning into that right now. And so I want to put work out there that sends us back upstream, towards if I'm not liking what I'm saying, people not connecting and making choices based on their own interests and not everybody. And this other stream is going towards we all want to just thrive and live a peaceful life, then I'm going to put my work over on that side, because
Mm-hmm.
I just want my work to inspire people to just see each other. Like, you looking at the eyes of one of my characters or whatever. Like I watch the news, I watch documentaries. Like I'm always wanting to know the stories about people.
Mm-hmm.
So and we can just just know that everybody has a story, that some piece of it we can connect to, have
Uh-huh.
empathy for. They can make a difference. So I like to channel that.
Well, yeah, and it's one thing that I have learned and strive to share with other people is if we can start to look at the similarities
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the differences. And that's what I hear you talking about, Cbabi, when you talk about community.
Yep.
Community is about connection, and we're all connected in some way, shape, or form. So, yeah, I think that is something that art can accomplish. I really do. But when you look at a lot of documentaries and you kind of take the world in, what, if anything, keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? One, too much of what I see, because I'm always thinking my brain's going 100 miles an hour. Yeah, making sure, me and my wife are comfortable, my kids are good, and wanting to always be able to assist in however I can or be available. I think those are the things that keep me up. Just wanting, my own family and then other people I hear about in stories. Like I just want, what keeps me up is just knowing that everybody isn't all right now,
Mhm.
and how can I play a part in that being a different situation.
Yeah, I think you just indirectly answered what was going to be my follow-up question, and that is, if you're up at night fretting or worrying or ruminating, whatever, what gets you up in the morning ready to create again? And it sounds like you've just given the answer, but expand on that.
Yeah, I will literally, if I don't turn on the news, I'll get up and go upstairs to my easel and start painting. Because even when I talk to my therapist and I'm like, whatever issue I'm telling her I got or something I need to work on or fix, I've always feel like some way it's connected to my brush, for the answer. Like, because sitting up worrying about it isn't going to do anything. Like that might, if anything, like you're saying, give me the fuel to move.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got that fuel, I need to do something with it. And so Yeah, it's either, yeah, that's what gets me up. It's the exact same things that keep me up at night, the same things that make me get up in the morning. Sometimes it's a little bit more abrupt in the morning because, all that stuff hits you
Mhm.
at one time. And that's a lot of angst. And, there's a few times I've jolted out of the bed and, and just standing up and shaking your body, makes a difference. So I
Yeah.
just take that energy and go upstairs and paint.
Well, yeah, those of you watching the video of this on YouTube, the What's the Point YouTube, you can get a hint that Cbabi's wearing a Superman T-shirt, and to accomplish a lot of what you talk about does kind of come under the heading of Superman. I mean, not endless powers, but trying to touch as many people as you can in a positive way. To me, defines Superman, a Superman. So the fact that you can fret at night and wake up in the morning and look for a solution. One of my favorite lines in a movie, and I won't even get into what the movie is, but it's what are you prepared to do? And it sounds like you're prepared to get up in the morning and say, I'm going to do what I can. And you put your art out in public, and it becomes public domain, if not public property. And what you've already said, Cbabi, is that you just hope people get some positive message from it, whatever that might be. Is that a fair to boil it down to a sentence? Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. And, yeah, we always want to find grand things to do, but just me sitting here thinking about now, like after this call, I got to go work on this mural I'm working on right now for, a client, and we are doing this mural for her, and the energy around it and the way she's responding will, she shares that energy with her customers, with her family, like,
Mhm.
people who are around her, she's buzzing, and the vibe is good and people are pulling over. So we never know when we're being watched or when we're being, so sometimes just the way we're moving through space affects
Mhm.
and sends a message to people because we honestly don't know who's watching us. So that's, sometimes when we think we're not doing anything, we're doing a lot.
Yeah, I've got a friend of mine says I watch the video, so that's people are always watching and getting some type of impression. So I want to come in a second to the project, The Wall in Washington, but you just talked about working on a mural. Is it an outdoor mural? Is it in a public spot?
It is. It's outdoor. Yep.
Yeah.
It's out in the county.
Okay. Because you've done what I find to be a very, at least in this area, famous mural on the wall in Washington, which is called Change is Going to Come. And you've recently kind of retouched that, redone that, updated it, whatever the correct word is. And it's really important because a lot of that area in downtown St. Louis has changed and evolved, and a lot of it's gone. But your mural is still there. What does that mean to you?
It means a lot because, yes, the community has changed. And also, what we were addressing in the mural was the fact that, the community is changing comes at a cost. And I think that's what I put in there. At what cost is what the addition I added to the piece, because
Mhm.
I portrayed a, older gentleman and some music because, the rich music history of St. Louis and this area where the mural is, there's a lot of talk. I think there's a new exhibit coming at the History Museum here about Mill Creek. And this area was part of that historic community.
Mhm.
And also knowing that, I think it's a Broken Heart of America book, he talks about how what was done here in St. Louis with the clearing of Mill Creek for the interstate was a model to be used all over the country. So I think, you know, I feel very special that we put that piece out there, whether people get it or not. Again, the intention. I think I love that painting is over there. I'm also on the wall with two other international Black artists. So the whole wall itself is a statement. All our styles are very different, but I think collectively, yeah, we put something out there that hopefully people are getting some from.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. I'm going to see if there's a visual of that someplace and put the link to it in the show notes because I think it'll be a powerful statement to people listening that can't just hop in the car here in St. Louis and drive down and look at it. But yeah, you just the world keeps changing, things keep changing, and how do you as an artist continue to keep your role in that changing community vital?
I think art is timeless. We had a professor telling us to not always paint make your painting something that is specifically tied to a moment. So I think what I create can resonate at any moment, at any time, but also like literally the time's changing. Like I draw more on my iPad now when I'm doing stuff for clients or when I'm doing, a mural sketch. Like, so I adapt to, even in my practice, things are changing very
Right.
fast. Like art is very connected to technology. So yeah, I mean, I'm always responding that way, but yeah, time and things are going to continue to move. And I just try to stay sincere and committed to, like, the show purpose. I mean, purpose never gets dated.
Yeah.
Your purpose, it has to bend based on things that are happening, but it really stays on the same road. So.
Yeah. A quick question that you mentioned AI. How do you see AI, artificial intelligence, impacting the art world? I mean, excuse me, it's already impacting a lot of people in the world of photography and across the board. Do you see its impact in the world of art?
You know, it's used a lot online. It is used in art, but just the way art has been portrayed, society, who has access to it, there's still a lot of people who don't have art in their home. So yeah, as far as art with social media and people posting images and we're not knowing what's real and what's not real, that's going to continue to happen. But I think as far as, my intention wanting to get physical art in people's homes, I think it's still the same struggle. It's still the same challenge. But I think a lot of that comes from, just it depends on how people were exposed to art from the time they were children. So if certain exhibits bring people into galleries or, keeps art in the conversation, there's some positive and negatives to it. Like I use AI for reference material, but I don't draw with AI. I
Mhm.
don't use it. I just use it to look at something and then I
Mm.
still do my own thing. So you just gotta, I mean, it ain't going anywhere. So I got to figure out how I make it work for me. And I don't get in long conversations with people about it because I just don't have the energy for that.
Yeah.
So
It strikes me, Cbabi, that what AI is not going to be able to do is to tap into the deep, personal, humanity, human meaning, the spirituality, and the magic of the art that a human can create. Yeah, AI is pretty amazing, but it's been created by humans,
absolutely.
not human. So, just seeing your work, and those of countless other artists, I don't think that'll be completely eradicated or replicated. Speaking of your art and speaking of the diversity in your art, there's a very cool project that you were a part of, again, here in St. Louis, with stained glass windows at the Episcopal Church of Holy Communion. Tell us about that.
Yeah, they contacted us and it was really, really cool because I got to work with the
Emil
name of
Fry.
the,
Emil Fry.
yes, Emma Fry. Thank you. And the story there is that they don't work with outside artists, as long as they've been around. So
Mhm.
one, going to their space is incredible. All the history there and just listening to the passion, and sharing their stories about all the churches that his father and grandfather had been a part of. Like that's wild. And so here I come, this church wants me to create some stained glass piece, but not only that, they want Mary and Jesus black, and they want Mary to have her fist up. And so I'm creating this in a studio where all the Christ images are white and
Mhm.
very traditional. But honestly, I got a lot of love while I was working there. Like they were really good to me while I was there. We had good vibes, good conversation, and yeah. And I honestly, I'm supposed to create three more pieces. Like, so the church is supposed to be raising money for me to create three more stories for their windows. So this was just the first. So it was a
Yeah.
great learning experience. And what's behind me is a painting that I did after I did the stained glass because I enjoyed the process so much. And since I paint, I wanted to see how it would
Yeah.
translate on the canvas.
So I'm going to go a little bit deeper in the story based on what I've read, and I think it's accurate, but correct me if it's not. But I love the story because it really reinforces so many different aspects of life and community and reality. So the pastor at the Church of Holy Communion, their congregation is 40 if not percent, if not more, black, and yet every image was white. And let's face it, in the Middle East, back in the day, people were brown. It wasn't a bunch of white folks. So I don't think it disparages, but I do think it's a really important part of relatability for people to be able to kind of see themselves, in particular when it's accurate, in particular when it's legitimate. But the pastor definitely wanted your work involved, and Emil Fry kind of said, "You know how many people at churches I do say, can't my uncle do the art?" And so they were real skeptical. And then shortly after you started working with them, apparently they called the pastor and said, "This dude's got it. He's cool. He knows what we're doing." So you adapted right away.
Yeah, they
I
brought
think
me
it's
in.
amazing.
Yeah, they brought me in for a test run to see how I would translate to the materials, and they had looked at my artwork and knew that I knew the way my use of lines and breaking up the canvas, that I would translate very well. So, and also they wanted, this is right after Mike Brown was killed, so they also wanted to just feed into that energy because they were very. I mean, their congregation really cared about a lot what was happening in the area and around the country, so they wanted to lean into that and nod to it as well. So.
Yeah. Which is not only admirable, it's justified and valid. Speaking of how you see the world, and I'm wondering how much this may have played into, or at least in your mind, you're creating art for stained glass. You've got Mary with her son Jesus and her fist up, and you just talked about Michael Brown, but did your experience, both in personal life and in awareness of the world, of the number of mothers and how they feel when they've lost their children, did that help drive you? Was that an awareness that you had when you were depicting this art?
Yeah, that was kind of the message, like just thinking about all the children who have fallen, to have this message of this mother, proclaiming and celebrating her son, rising after having been tortured. So, I mean, it's just symbolic. It was, yeah. So the timing was great. Like it just, I have an artwork that I put up called, "Rest in Peace, Son," which is kind of around the same thing. Just these parents, like as parents, like we hope that, we go before our children do. None of us want our children to perish before we do, natural or unnatural causes. So yeah, so all of that played a part. I was feeling all that when we were working on it.
And that just ties back quickly to what we just talked about earlier about AI and that type of emotion, that type of experience, that type of feeling, that type of humanity isn't going to come through in AI by itself. So, I think that just helps to reinforce that AI is a powerful tool. It's going to be helpful to us in the world, but we also have to understand its limitations. What can art bring? What can it show us about being human? AI aside, what can art show us about being human that words alone can't?
The art's being done by humans, so we're all bringing our life experience into it. So the power of it, yes, it can tap into emotion, it can tap into people's stories and let folks know that whatever they're going through, they're not alone. It could help people see, because you have this image up that's not speaking back to you, so you can actually take the time to look at it and stare and take it in and have a connection, have a conversation with yourself with this piece of art, and maybe wherever else it takes you. But also beyond that, like I like hearing when artists show that the way that artists create and put work out there, whether it be visual, dance, music, it shows that there are other ways to look at things. Because many of us can look at the same face. If there are 100 artists in the room, all 100 of those portraits are going to look different. And that's just a metaphor for everything in life. There are different perspectives. Even if we swear we're looking from the same angle, we're all taking something in differently. It's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we relay it and translate it and bring it into who we are and put it back out, infinite possibilities. So if anything, I think the beauty of art is that it lets us know that, there are a lot of ways to live this life. outside of the way that we think is the way. There's just a little extra something you can put on it that can make it just a little spicier, a little different, a little enjoyable.
Yeah.
Slow it down, speed it up. Like, yeah, I think art has the ability to do all that and much more. Open our minds, which we need all the time.
Yes, we do. We absolutely do. So during the intro, I talked about this is a show, this is a place where we have people who live in their purpose and embrace the passion that drives that purpose. Help us understand your take on that. I mean, to me, your purpose is to create art and your passion is to touch lives with that art. And so people listening, sometimes I feel people get confused with it's all about passion. I feel passion flames out. I think passion is like kindling to the fire. I think purpose is the firewood. But tell us how you keep those two in sync and in a way that the listeners might be able to go, aha.
Yeah, it's very hard sometimes to get up and work. And a phrase I usually have in my mind is that it's worse to think about it than to do it. And then when I tell myself that, or I push through that, and it's interesting because sometimes I get the brush back in my hand, and I'm really not motivated about what I'm working on. Something in what I'm doing I'll connect with, and then I'm good and I'm there. So I think the purpose, like you're saying, the firewood, like it's that it's always present. And if we stay focused on that, like we're not like anything we hear, sports or whatever, we're not ever going to be in the mood all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if this is something that, we care deeply about, we got to figure out some way to push past that.
Yeah.
And it's different things on different days, that becomes the oomph to get up. But I feel like all the time, if I just start, that fire, that fun, that whatever to get me through it will happen. And I'll burn out and get exhausted and tired. But, I also think about the reactions that I get from people. My wife will remind me what somebody said about a thing, or I can just see how she likes to work. Like all those things become the fuel, to get up and keep doing it, because we just got to keep doing it.
Yeah, I've also come to believe, Cbabi, that we don't have a singular purpose. We've got kind of a general purpose that has little sprouts, maybe like a tree branch coming off. And sometimes we have to, focus on a little bit different aspect of our core purpose and to rekindle that passion. But it still allows us to keep moving in the right direction.
To play off of your words a little bit,
please do.
maybe with the whole AI and all that, like I think sometimes, like right now, me painting, that is my tool, the purpose, because folks always ask what I would have done, or if I could have done anything differently. And I think even if I had gotten to cutting hair or anything else, I think it would have still been the same purpose, and I still would have been definitely into people wanting to be seen and community. I've always moved like that. So like when you were saying purpose is bigger than, so I just wanted to add that little piece, like, the way I'm doing it now is with my brush, but it's not always just with my brush.
And I appreciate that clarification because it brings a lot of depth and perception to what I was saying. Yeah, you fulfill your purpose a lot with your brush, with your words, with your music, with your life, with your commitment, with your openness, and with your open heart. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, but it's time for that question that every guest gets asked, Cbabi, and you get to answer this however you see fit, my friend, and that is, what's the point?
The point is because we're all connected. For me, that, if I have that question in my mind all the time, what is the point? Is because we all need each other. Even when we don't think we do, we do. So whether you want to accept it or not, it's just the fact. That's how we move as humans, on this planet. We need to get better at caring about one another. So that's the point.
And a heck of a point, and I couldn't agree with you more. Cbabi Bayoc, you are an amazing human. You add so much to the world, and you've added a great deal to What's the Point podcast. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your insights, and I look forward to continuing to see your work as you produce it.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. And if you like what you've heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise there is value to be gained in every one. Taking a second to rate, review, and share the show helps make us more discoverable and enables others to find out what's the point. If you'd like to learn more about Bill Ellis and his services, please visit his website, billellis.com. See you next time.